Make sure the audio works this time. Because after what I experienced what was that on Saturday? That was terrible. I actually had someone ask me, why are you doing two streams? And I said it's because the audio was so horrible on the first one I did. I said a little to Dirk, give him a little greeting, and wave at him and all that. Also, you'll get a sequel to I Don't Care About None of This Trash on Saturday, most likely. But at some point, this week, because there have been more developments in relation to that story. Oh, Susan Rice, in an op-ed published Monday, decried President Trump's foreign policy, saying he was putting his political party before country and singling out his policies and rhetoric toward Russia, Israel, and Venezuela. Mr. Trump welcomes and encourages Russia, a hostile adversary, to interfere in our elections so long as the manipulations benefit him. Rice, a former national security advisor to President Obama, wrote in the New York Times. He discards decades of bipartisan policy on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict to curry favor with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel and thus right-wing political support, she continued. The president follows a basic, if unorthodox playbook, he and his party over our country. Now, if you remember the stream, or if you saw it, the one we did yesterday on, the clowning Fox News or whatever, there was a point where I said, these people like to virtue signal. They go around and they say words and they try to make it seem like if Trump says something, it's the end of the world, and we've never seen this before, and oh my God, he's not talking from the teleprompter. This is a person, who wrote this op-ed. She was supposed to, by the way, run for the Senate in Maine, but she chickened out or bucked out of wanting to do it. This is an individual who was part of the previous administration. Was it check on? What happened, Dirk? What's wrong? Some kind of issue? Let me get back to what I was saying. This is a person who during the weird scratching again. Oh no. Let's check this out. Let's see what the problem is. Let's diagnose the issue. I don't hear it. Is it still there? Derek, you're over here trolling me. I'm not hearing the noise. Like 30 to a minute back. Oh, me. This is terrible. I still think that's way better than what happened the last time. Yeah, I'm gonna just continue, and if it messes up, hey, I tried. But going back to what I was saying, so this is an individual who served in the previous administration as the national security advisor, where they had 7 wars, and if people need me to say them again, I will. And you can't have multiple conflicts with all these different countries and then get mad if Trump has it with, let's say, a new one. It's like, oh no, it was okay to bomb, or rather, let me go specifically to the biggest issue I'm seeing with her. So I've spoken before about how the U.S. is really hypocritical, just overall, right? Like these top officials, because these are the same people who will never condemn and or recognize the U.S. trying to interfere in elections and or with the regimes of countries like Iran and recently Venezuela, but will sit here and cry foul about Russia trying to mess with our democracy. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, "Oh no, we need to have our elections and our leaders selected by the people from here." But when it comes to this other country, oh, let's go to town and mess with them and tell them who's going to sit in their primary place of position or be their leader. Again, no one else sees that as hypocritical besides me and a few other people online. And as far as disregarding the decades of bipartisan policy on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Like, what the hell does that even mean? Like, again, I'm no fan of Clinton, but at least he had the thing with Yitzhak Rabin and the Oslo Accords, which, in my view, was the last time Israel actually had a chance and someone that was serious about wanting to, end that conflict. But all these ones after him, and I think arguably some of the ones before him, they all do the same thing of just kissing Israel's behind with very little exception. And then if they do something that isn't entirely in their favor, they get called anti-Semitic. They get charged of being an opponent of Israel. It's like I don't I don't get what she's saying, because she's trying to critique him over this relationship when the principal critiques coming from these American people that are in high positions is usually because you're not pro-Israel enough. So it just, like, this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about, where if a person that is not of the same party does something, it's terrible. But if you're of the same party, it's okay. So if, let's say, Obama was a complete stooge for Israel, which I'd argue he wasn't entirely. He was like a little bit at the end, but you get my point, that if he were to do this exact same thing, she'd be perfectly fine with it. You can go and look up her tenure as national security advisor. She never complained about Israel or anything they did. How dare you not kiss the ring of Israel, you anti-Semite? Yeah, but that's the thing. She's critiquing him for doing that, and it's like, this is what I'm saying about how you have some people who just will find a problem with anything, like the Russian interference stuff. Even though I think it's really stupid because we're being hypocritical, it at least is a valid critique. But you're upset because he's doing what any of these different pro-Israel government groups would want him to do, and would want a Democrat to do what a lot of Democrats favor. So it's really dumb on her part. Oh, this is interesting. As many as 1 million species of plants and animals face extinction, with human activity contributing to the threats to nature, according to a United Nations report released Monday. The Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services released its first comprehensive report on biodiversity, which found species loss is rapidly increasing, but that it is not too late to make meaningful changes to address the problem. So this is another one of those things, like, how the hell did we, like, what? We just came around and decided to do all this evil stuff. Okay, the health of ecosystems on which we and all other species depend is deteriorating more rapidly than ever. We are eroding the very foundations of our economies, livelihoods, food security, health and quality of life worldwide, said Robert Watson, a British chemist who chaired the UN panel. Damn, we're like, I said before, the US is going to hell, as in, like, it's declining in quality and the people are refusing to know what's happened before, which means they're more likely to repeat certain mistakes. But this guy's literally saying the world is just in a rapid downward spiral. Did you hear about Frozen good recalls? No. The report also tells us that it is not too late to make a difference, but only if we start now at every level from local to global, Watson added. He said it will require transformative change to conserve and restore natural habitats, including shifting economic patterns, social habits, and other factors. Now, there's no way in hell that people are organized enough to do any of this stuff. And that's really a shame that you can have and I've been over this before, people have a really weird thing of, like, if you ask them just generically, right, do you care about your fellow man? Most of them would say yes. But then when you actually say, let's put that to the test, metaphorically speaking, and then, you give a specific example, like, oh, hey, your government is bombing thousands of people in this foreign country. Oh, whatever. Oh, you're eroding a million different lives or whatever from between plants and animals. Whatever. Like, they don't take the step to actually show their discontent with the whatever problem is happening. If you, for example, were so bothered by the 1 million, what is this, different species that are being threatened, maybe you can read the UN report and listen to this doctor and his official statements and try to contribute to not being the problem. Sometimes you don't have to directly be the solution to not cause the issue. If I, for example, said I'm going to avoid destroying these different habitats that they're saying are being eroded. Even if that doesn't mean I'm going out of my way to secure them and make them better, I'm also going out of my way to not be part of the problem. So it still is, it's a decent halfway point in my opinion. See, I thought that climate change was too late 3 years ago. Then again, I'm very realistic when it comes to this topic. Oh, nihilistic when it comes to this topic. Yeah, I'm not sure anymore. Just like U.S. environmental policy has sucked for the last 2 years. They just I think you remember that rule where they have it to where every new regulation get rid of two of them, like stupid stuff such as that, where you don't really try to address the individual problems going on, just sort of accept the fact that things are the way they are and try to make them worse in your own little way. So I'm not entirely sure. I'm fairly convinced it has to do with climate change. It has to do with just people doing stuff on a daily basis. There's a lot of things that go into it, but I didn't see them narrow down what exactly is just outright causing these problems. But like I said, there are some people who will not buy into the idea of human activity influencing the environment until some of the things around them just start dropping dead, which is very scary because it means that to kind of accept a lot of these talking points from commentators, they've had to just turn their brains off. Let me go to the next story. President Trump on Monday blamed Democrats for delaying a disaster relief bill that has been stalled in Congress for months and suggested Puerto Rico should be very happy with the recovery assistance it has received thus far. Trump claimed that Democrats are responsible for a breakdown in negotiations over disaster relief funding, and as a result, the party is delaying money for several other states in need of money following flooding and other natural disasters. The Dems don't want farmers to get any help, Trump tweeted. Puerto Rico should be very happy, and the Dems should stop blocking much needed disaster relief. So, what I always find funny is when, like I was saying before, how there was a commentator on Twitter that was talking about how Democrats and liberals and whatever all try to demonize Trump and make him out to be the worst thing that ever came to be, which I'm not saying they don't, but I argued that, or rather, I said in response to this without directly talking back to the person, that people on the other side have said the exact same thing about the other side. And if you don't believe me, you can just go back to that first line of that tweet. The Dems don't want farmers to get any help. So that's already trying to paint them as the enemy of the farmers who have these evil intentions to see you starve to death. Dirk says Dems are screwing you, Trump says, while screwing you. Hey, I think they're screwing us together. They're hand in hand. Oh, here we go. Dirk, get ready for your girlfriend. She's about to be discussed by another one of her secret admirers. Okay, Senator Rick Scott, Republican of Florida, the governor that let multiple people just get blown to pieces in his state year after year until was it Stoneman Douglas? Until that particular shooting, just like over and over, just with no problem, let people get blasted. With you get my point, just with recurrence. And Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Democrat of New York, got into a heated online exchange on Monday after Scott took a jab at the Green New Deal, and Ocasio-Cortez shot back that it was embarrassing that a sitting U.S. senator could say something lacking so much critical thinking. Scott later claimed that Ocasio-Cortez didn't understand sarcasm and that she embarrassed both herself and Congress as a whole. The exchange on Twitter started with Scott voicing criticism of Senator Cory Booker, Democrat of New Jersey's sweeping gun control proposal that includes license requirements for all gun owners. Scott denounced it as a terrible idea, adding that it would be scary if the 2020 Democratic presidential candidate assumed power in the White House. What's next? We have to register sharp knives, Scott asked on Twitter. Maybe Ocasio-Cortez will make us register every time we buy meat as part of her Green New Deal. See, whatever. You know, what I find really comical is that he's saying she doesn't get sarcasm after we've spent months with him as senator, saying all kind of nasty stuff about gun control, about the Green New Deal. So, like, what is sarcastic about you mocking something that you've already said seriously that you don't believe in? Like, why would she not take that as serious when you're known to oppose this idea and fearmonger about it? Let's see. Dirk says, "Oh, speaking of her, did you watch Knockdown? I heard about it, but I haven't seen it yet. It's so good. Oh my God, WoW can't even have a discussion because they don't see these shootings as a problem that can be controlled to an extent." Well, that's the point, that like if you bring up any of these ideas, they just kind of tell you as their way of, not having anything different, happen or change, attempt to change stuff. This is as good as it gets, with all these different people getting blown to pieces, accept what's going on and just let it go. So that was a really stupid story. And I'm still, I mean, to be fair to Florida, they only barely voted him in because he just narrowly overcome Rick Scott. VVS, you can't be in here. You're supposed to be signing autographs and getting your picture taken with loads and loads of people who have been influenced by your words and various sayings. This stream is beneath you. Yeah, that only after hours you do that. Okay, Dirk says, but at least some people that have that view on guns to stay the same are against the war on drugs. Well, that's kind of my point. That like, just because someone has a crappy view on one idea doesn't mean everything else is terrible. Like with Walter Jones, that congressman that died back in February. The reason he was such a big deal to me, even though he was just this one member of the House and you got over 400 of them, was the fact that he was one of the few Republicans I'd seen who had served in office in my lifetime who openly talked about the need to repeal Citizens United and get money out of politics and the corruption and opposed wars. Like it just, he was really, really unique. But again, that was still someone that I had multiple things I disagreed with them on, mostly having to do with different social issues. And he was one, I think he was the only Republican that voted against the tax cut because he was saying that it would, you guys whine about the $1 trillion deficit and say that this is why these democratic social programs can't work. But then you wanted me to support some bill that's going to, by the estimate of economists, increase the deficit anyway. So he just had more morals than a lot of these people. Dirk says a broken clock is right twice a day. Well, I don't think he was a broken clock, but you get the point or the idea of what I'm saying. I hope. Ooh, a new poll. Let's look at this. Republicans have erased a double-digit Democratic advantage in enthusiasm for the 2020 presidential election, according to a new poll. The latest NBC News Wall Street Journal survey finds that 75% of Republican respondents rated their interest in the election as a 9 or a 10 on the 10-point scale, while 73% of Democratic respondents said the same. They are really polling people on how excited they are for an election. Like not polling you on who you support, what issues you consider the most important to you, on whether you're getting a boner over this election. Like, yeah, why would you be surprised that there's like 20% of both sides that don't care? Because they know that it doesn't matter. That's gonna be the same stuff with a different face. I don't think I've ever seen a poll like that where they ask you about whether you're excited for the election. Really weird. $3,000 more. Well, no, that's immigration. I'm not touching that. Every time that gets brought up, people lose their mind and start calling me all kind of names. Oh, here's a good one. A plurality of independent voters don't think Congress should begin impeachment proceedings against President Trump, even though most don't approve of the commander in chief, according to a new poll. The latest NBC News Wall Street Journal poll released Sunday found that 45% of independents say Congress should not hold impeachment hearings, compared to 19% who believe there's enough evidence to begin impeachment proceedings. So this is notable, and I've tried to say before that I don't believe a majority of people who identify as progressives actually back impeaching Trump, because if you do it, and this is another one of those Clinton legacies where anytime you don't like someone, the other side tries to get rid of them in a manner that is not based on, winning an election, which is why every president since after Clinton has had impeachment threats made against them by different members of Congress and whatnot. It's funny to kind of see how you can have all these people go, yeah, I don't want, I'm not a fan of him, but I don't want him out of office. Maybe because some of them have done their research and know that getting rid of him is just going to get rid of some mean tweets and all the other stuff that you don't like, actual policies, the things people are supposed to care about, are just going to be continued by his vice president. Hey, like, how many of those idiots on Twitter talking about impeach him and get rid of him, yank him from office, ever say impeach Pence? How many? Because they just, this is the bane of elections. It's become more about personality. So if you get rid of him, you're going to get stuck with Pence, and the same things are going to happen. They're just not going to have as much coverage because Pence will know how to not run his mouth every couple of minutes. People are fine with this. They like to live in this really rear view mirror where they believe if you just remove Trump, everything goes back to normal, and all this stuff that was problematic way before he got there is just going to magically resolve itself. Like, they really live in that Disney movie, so they can have fun with this. Just seems that most people apparently don't, so that's another reassuring thing. There's always some poll or some different statistic that impresses me when it's like, oh, independents say this, like, yeah, because they don't do that party bootlicking thing. They don't subscribe to the idea that this one side is so great and every other side is so terrible. So it's all good. Let's see this right here. A Catholic cardinal blasted ex-White House strategist Steve Bannon's plan to use a former Italian monastery as a training academy for far-right politics, according to Politico. In a January letter to Benjamin Harnell, a Bannon associate leading the effort, Cardinal Renato Maria Martino said the space was intended to be used for an apolitical theological training center. Martino vowed to resign as honorary president of the Jesus Christ, these words, of the Dignitatis Humane Institute, DHI, the group overseeing Bannon's plans for the monastery, if there are distortions or modifications to the original plan. I recommend you to make sure the Abbey is really turned into a place for worship and meeting open to everyone, Martino wrote, according to an English translation of the letter. I really hope you and DHI succeed in carrying out the project without any distortions or modifications, including in its implementation phase, that will degenerate the purposes you have worked for so hard. You have worked for, oh, wow, I actually got it right. I thought I was reading it incorrectly, because I figured the person would say you've worked so hard to do this. They said you have worked for so hard, which I think is I don't want to say broken English, because it's not grammatically false. It's just could be phrased a little bit differently. Yeah, he was really going to turn this little religious place into a center to teach people how to, be right wing, which I don't know what, like, this is what I don't get about these kind of plans. Why can't they just get their own place that doesn't have any of that, background of trying to be apolitical, and just do it there? Like, it's almost, this is why I said that a lot of these people in these stories seem like jokes, because they take things that seem really simple and just kind of basic. When I think of ramifications of doing certain things, and they just make it entirely difficult, and suddenly some big issue. So let's get away from that story and move over to everybody's favorite Treasury Secretary, the person that Dirk loves the most, even more than his girlfriend AOC. The Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin, on Monday formally rejected Democrats' request for President Trump's tax return, saying it lacks a legitimate legislative purpose. I am informing you now that the department may not lawfully fulfill the committee's request, Mnuchin said in a letter to the House Ways and Means Committee Chairman Richard Neal, Democrat of Massachusetts. The response, while widely expected, sets the stage for a likely court battle as Democrats are expected to continue their push for the returns. Some lawmakers and experts have said they expect Neal to issue a subpoena for the documents. Democrats may also vote to hold Trump administration officials in contempt. Eventually, Democrats are expected to sue the Trump administration, asking a judge to enforce a portion of the tax code that allows for certain lawmakers to request and receive tax returns. Let's see. What do they say? Oh, Ruben just finally showed up. I was getting ready to just bow out because we were, the chat was deceased and people were leaving in large boats and, writing all kind of mean things that hurt my feelings. And I almost curled up in a ball and committed suicide right then and there. I was so sad. What I don't get about the tax return thing, and we've already been over that, I think it's stupid because the people who are mainly pushing it are the ones that nobody actually knows of for leading on any issues. What I mean by that is they've turned their careers into just being the Trump opposition team versus, lawmakers. Is that in that letter, he says, we may not, Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, we may not be able to fulfill this request. But he says may, meaning that there's some kind of scapegoat, like sort of backhanded way of possibly doing this. Like, if he's definitely saying this will not happen, he would just go, yeah, we're not doing that. Too bad, so sad, cry me a river, basically. But instead, he goes, we're not likely to complete this request. You mean the establishment Democrats and their supporters in the entertainment industry? Yeah, pretty much. Like, they're the only ones who whine about this stuff, and they tried to use it to smear Sanders, and it didn't work because he eventually put his out. I love that so much. Like, reading all those little comments on Twitter. Why hasn't Sanders released his tax returns? Why hasn't he put them out? What is he hiding? And then he puts them out, and then again, it's one of those things where if you see how it was before it actually happens, it's a lot funnier in retrospect. Right, it's there. Man, let me see if I can read this. I almost want to take what I really do need to find some other way of rearranging the layout, because anytime somebody writes some really big comment, I just keep scooting near there to sort of magnify my ability to see it, which sucks. Let's see. Oh, I can't make this any bigger. Yeah, that's just. I'll just see it on the when I rewatch it afterwards. So that'll just be the solution. All right, let's talk about some is this EFXFL signs TV deals with all these different groups. Yada yada yada. Let's see. Oh, this is Hickenlooper aligns himself with capitalists in an op-ed. Oh, here it is. Here's a good story. China on Monday rejected the idea of a trilateral nuclear arms negotiations with the U.S. and Russia after President Trump said he discussed the possibility last week in a call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Reuters reported that Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Geng Shuang said Beijing's nuclear arsenal could not be compared to Russia or the U.S., and that it was at the lowest level of its national security needs. China opposes any country talking out of turn about China on the issue of arms control and will not take part in any trilateral negotiations on a nuclear disarmament agreement, Gang said when asked about Trump's comments, according to Reuters. Trump was asked last Friday following his phone call with Putin whether the two were discussing extending the Obama era New strategic arms reduction treaty start, which caps the number of nuclear warheads the United States and Russia can deploy at 1,550 each, among other provisions. The president said he and Putin had talked about the possibility of including China in negotiations. I think we're going to probably start up something very shortly between Russia and ourselves, maybe to start off, he told reporters during a meeting with the Slovak prime minister. And I think China will be added down the road. We'll be talking about non-proliferation. We'll be talking about a nuclear deal of some kind. I think it will be a very comprehensive one. Does no one get the really general terms that were being used there? Was during I'm noticing a pattern. Oh, you mean Trader Milano, the one that switched sides? That, like suddenly despises him after backing him? I've noticed another thing, that now people that were like they kind of have taken on these alternate roles, because like with me, I was a Sanders supporter last time around, and I am again. You have the one broad, Simone, whatever her name was, the one, the lady with as like the hair about as long as mine, who initially was part of Sanders' campaign and then switches over to Biden, and then the media makes a big deal. I was like, no, that was never a person that any of us took seriously. You guys are acting like his campaign manager switched over. So it's not a big deal. Yeah, yeah. I knew she had that first name, but I didn't the last name. I was like, oh, there's no way somebody that worked for his campaign had the same last name. What are the chances? Oh, and then that one chick, the one that is in what was it, Nevada, that accused Biden of touching her because she was a supporter of Sanders last time around. They're now using his connection to her, again from a campaign that was before what happened this year, as evidence that he had something to do with her coming out and accusing Biden. Like, that's what I'm saying. And people just, like, I did the video about, the less people you know, the better off you are. It's because of stuff like that, where, he smiles in this one video with her one time during this whole campaign, and now it's this big conspiracy theory. It's like, Bernie's secretly plotting to destroy all the candidates with scandals and affairs. It's like, yes. I'm making many people who used to support during now openly talking, shilling the establishment candidate Democrats. Look at what Sean King put out about O'Rourke. Oh my God, he's so great and wonderful and talented, and I'm happy he's running. And people that think of that should stick to making fiction. People that think, I never say people that think like that should stick to fiction. Let's see. Ruben says, "Me too. Endorse." Holy. How did you? Well, that was that's what's so sad about these different groups. Like, they just weaponized. Like, people really don't get how. So, for example, right, two of the guys in Congress that got accused, Al Franken, and also what was the other one? The man, the guy, the one that was the dean of Congress. I'm forgetting his name at the moment. Conyers. One thing those two had in common that most other Democrats didn't have at the time? They were both supporters of single payer. And then you're going to tell me that it's not a coincidence when two of the few supporters in Congress of single payer healthcare get accused and end up having to resign after these accusations come out against them. If you want a conspiracy theory, there's one right there. Why did two of the few people that backed this proposal get targeted in such a manner for these allegations? Like, no one wants to deal with it, like, except the fact that Big Pharma possibly motivated those chicks to come out and make their accusations. But hey, people want to keep thinking everything's hunky dory and we're getting rid of all the bad guys. Let them. That's why I don't associate with them on any personal level. So I managed to largely stay disaffected as a result. Which, again, if we're talking about getting accused of stuff that someone says something and because they have a taco between their legs, it it's credible. I'd rather be away from that. So this is another one of those issues. let's see. Ruben says it's funny how even after these outrage culture trends turn out to be to be what is this pay out oh to be psyop movements, there are still even progressives that want to keep focusing on it, that want to keep pushing it rather. Yeah, like I said, that stuff isn't a coincidence. But people, they have to tell themselves that because they don't want to accept the fact that maybe the group that was seen as supposedly being good has, isn't that wonderful? What is? Have you ever, oh, an experiment led up to the point? Okay, I don't know what that means. Maybe that's some kind of metaphor. Over here trying to confuse me and trip me up and have my ignorance on full display. So I'm not entirely sure what you meant by that. Ruben, can you tell me what he's trying to say? I don't understand. I'm confused. So I was the only one of these like non-domesticated animals, so stuff that isn't like a dog or a cat that I would even try to be interested in seeing are cheetahs. So I thought they looked cool. Okay, we're gonna start discussing animals. A trio of Senate Democrats are asking Justice Department watchdogs to probe potential talks between Attorney General William Barr and White House staff about investigations spinning off from Special Counsel Robert Mueller's Russia investigation. Senators Richard Blumenthal, Democrat of Connecticut, Sheldon Whitehouse, Democrat of Rhode Island, who was a terrible man, and Mazie Hirono, Democrat of Hawaii, sent a letter to Justice Department Inspector General Michael Horowitz and Office of Professional Responsibility Director. Jesus Christ. Office of Professional Responsibility Director. That is a what even is that? Whatever. Corey Amundsen on Monday asking them to investigate if Barr shared the names of spinoff cases with White House staff. You know, you're under a whole bunch. You're in a bunch of crap if you have all of those different investigations going on, just all kind of stuff happening. I don't get the comment either, Dirk. I'm confused too. I'm befuddled. And Metadol has returned after her long slumber and departure and absence and lack of appearances and whatnot. Deserves to be investigated. Yeah, it's just they have all these different investigations going, and then when we get to a point where no one wants to talk about any actual policy, and instead they just discuss all the different investigations, people get surprised. Like that's the whole point of having all these things. They're meant to distract from substantive issues. Like people really don't get that even now. Which is insane. I didn't even read most of that story. I was like, all right, let me get the start of it, and we can assume the rest. Education Secretary Betsy DeVos, who I wish she would be fired. I wish like people always talk, oh my God, this new person left so quickly that Trump. Like, how did of all the people he could get rid of, why doesn't he get rid of her? She's literally only known for being so terrible that she barely got through. I think it was like a tie vote they had to use to confirm her. And then like apparently she's not even she didn't have any experience. She bought the seat. Like the one of the ones that sucks most of his whole cabinet is just going to stay there the whole time. It looks like. Education Secretary Betsy DeVos on Monday said that she thinks the media uses her name for clickbait. That's her trying to be trendy. As much as many in the media use my name as clickbait or try to make it all about me, it's not, she said while speaking to journalists at a conference in Baltimore, according to Politico. DeVos, one of the longest serving members of Trump's cabinet, added that she doesn't like the attention and increased spotlight that comes with her position atop the education department. Well, sorry, but that's part of being a department head. Like, how can you be the leader of a significant agency in the U.S. government and then not expect to have an increased spotlight over when you didn't hold any office? Exactly. Why is no one going after DeVos enough? It's because they're just like, out of all these cabinet members, I never see them talk about any of them other than the. I think the closest one that got a bunch of attention was the EPA director, and that still isn't even a cabinet position. He just like was obsessed over because he was known for all those little different scandals. No, she's been able to really slickly get away with just not having any attention brought on her. DeVos said DeVos and her brother are still with Dump, along with Mnuchin, and think that's how his name is spelled. I'm surprised Comey hasn't left. Where's this? Conway hasn't left yet. That's because her husband is too busy roasting Trump, and they're just shelling insults back and forth. You remember she was getting in. I think people actually forget this. She was probably the person I heard about the most after, like, that month after Trump got in the White House, because they kept talking about all the little stupid things that were happening in relation to her. They talked about that picture on the couch in the Oval Office. They talked about the Bowling Green massacre, and then alternative facts. And there was some other thing where she said go buy Ivanka's stuff, and that was a violation of some kind of code where a government official can't promote products. Mr. Cranstein. Were you using that guy's name from Twitter, the one that's obsessed with Trump, that every time he posts something, he has to say something back? Yeah, it's them and the Palmer Report who literally have just like turned their entire lives into being. Oh, I know there's two of them, but it's like those three people that have turned their entire online personas into just being the Trump opposition team. Like they're obsessed with him. Every time he tweets something, here they come. Don't expect them to actually talk about any policies, but if they can sit here and tell you how stupid the president is day after day, week after week, year after year, and get popular off of it too. Was this an op-ed? Okay, tensions between the United States and Iran are reaching a boiling point as the first anniversary of President Trump's withdrawal from the Iran nuclear deal approaches. That was really stupid of him, by the way. Like I said, we try not to critique him because, I feel the media already does, but that was a really dumb move. Like it's tied right up there with staying in Yemen that I really despise. Especially the fact that a year later, all the countries that were in there with you are still there should show how much dumber it's going to look over time. That you were the only one who was so terrible at keeping their word that you pulled out. The Trump administration on Sunday said a U.S. carrier strike group is headed to the region in response to unspecified, troubling, and escalating indications and warnings. The following day, several official and semi-official Iranian news agencies hinted at responses coming later this week to mark Trump's announcement on May 8, 2018, to abandon U.S. participation in the 2015 accord. Those responses could reportedly include Iran reducing its compliance with the agreement, officially known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. But then it's like, you pulled out and now you're, Jesus Christ. You can't have the country that signs the thing pull out and then you're supposed to just sit there and go, well, I have to keep, complying with the rules of the agreement. Yeah. So China defended fentanyl, a controlled substance. Yeah, I think I'm not sure. I don't pay too much attention to China, admittedly. I know I should, but between the U.S. and all the little different officials and senators, I'm so sorry. I'm very apologetic. As the 1-year anniversary of the U.S. withdrawal from the JCPOA fast approaches, Washington is ratcheting up the pressure on Iran through diplomatic, economic, and now even military means. So they're basically saying we're going to screw with you in every way possible. Behnam Ben Tailbu, a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracy, said in an email to The Hill. The Trump administration has been ramping up criticism of Tehran considerably in recent weeks, with more sanctions expected in the coming days. The administration last month took the unprecedented step of designating Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, as a foreign terrorist organization, the first time the United States has used the label on an entire government entity. And I kept telling people there are very significant things that are happening that get like no attention, but then when Trump tweets something, it gets blown up. Oh my God, look what he said today. It's like, this is the first time ever the US has used the label of foreign terrorist organization on an entire government entity, and it got no coverage. And no one thinks that's a big deal. That's what I'm saying. I live in the Twilight Zone. Okay, Jones called them the cheek, was it the cheekoms? It is spelled all three of those ways. Yeah, but I swear, I don't even know what to say anymore. I'm blown away. Like, you have actual historical things going on, and people, they pay no attention to it. But then if someone tweets or shows out at some hearing, oh, here we go. Social media is ablaze, and no one cares other than a couple of people. So I think that's pretty much as good as the new, or as interesting as the news is going to get. We're going to get some more sanctions on Iran in the next coming days as we prepare to start our, was it 8th or 9th consecutive war? Dirk says repeats of history and nobody blinks an eye. Nobody bats an eye. Well, it's like I said, we literally have been funding a genocide for several years at this point, and I still have idiots that don't see a problem with doing that. That don't seem to realize their tax dollars are being used to extinguish lives because a foreign government is pissed that their friendly government got toppled by some rebels in a country that has nothing to do with us. Ruben says Bolton wanted us to invade Iran in 2006 along with the Bush administration people. Oh, I'd love to do a whole stream just about him if you wanted that, Ruben. Like just that particular, because I think he probably, given the fact that he's now influenced foreign issues in two different administrations and is an even higher position now, I think he's shaping up to be one of the most influential voices on these topics, at least in like the last 20 years. Kind of in the same way how people who don't like Kissinger will admit he was like the biggest, the most effective Secretary of State in like 50 years. Same thing. Where, you have to give people credit for actually being impactful, even if you are disgusted with what they choose to do and whatnot. He's another one of those little silent villains that because he's not president, we don't hear too much about. So he gets to like do a lot of horrible things and get away with it because the spotlight isn't on him. Even though he was thinking of running for president at one point and chose not to. Baldwin and a bunch of others that fuel the wars, being in any position other than prison is mind-blowing. Yeah, they don't go to jail for their warmongering and for the sacrificing of a bunch of lives. And it's kind of funny just to think about how both Bolton and Trump are known as draft dodgers, and then here they are with 7 wars under their belt, trying to get into another one. Not even another one, another 2 with North Korea and Iran. Well, apparently Trump doesn't want war with North Korea, but Bolton definitely does. And then when you throw in Venezuela, it's like they just never end, man. I can't wait for the day that I wake up in like 10 years and we've got 20 wars. Like there's a war for every year I've been alive. It's coming. And unless there's a change in the people that, influence policies, we're stuck with it. Just like we had the Yemen vote, and this thing passes the Senate twice, and we still stuck over there. And people want to tell us our government's not broken. And the second time it passed with the House, and they got overridden by Trump because he wants to, bomb innocent people for the hell of it. or rather for that defense contractor cash. Let's see. Was a draft dodger. I didn't even know. I should have guessed it. Yeah, there's like a whole statement by him about not wanting to go die in a rice paddy for Ted Kennedy or something like that. But the point was he recognized the value of his own life and, kept himself safe. But then when it comes to other people's lives, hey, fully expendable. I've never seen this person before. I'm getting a little excited. It's a new character. Wow. Hey, we're going back to what I was saying. I'd probably be really interested. I'd love to do a series of streams like about different senators and like make the case of why the person was a big deal and just like stuff that you might not have heard of from mainstream media. Because like I said, there's a lot of people that directly have impacted stuff that just don't get any attention, whether they're good or bad, or whether I think they're good or bad. Just kind of go through it. Well, I appreciate that I've attempted to show some level of understanding of the new stories I discuss and topics and whatnot. The effectiveness of that I can't really control because, people choose to watch what they want to watch. So thank you for checking us out. I appreciate it. Maybe I'll do a stream tomorrow. It's a little bit harder because, Tuesdays are, well, yeah. Lots of senators in Congress are a blur. Hey, that's why the ones that stick out happen to, be something that should be talked about. So again, I get it, but that's my point. That senator video would be very helpful. Yeah, that's why I'm planning on doing it. So again, thank you for checking it out. I appreciate it. And like I said, these stories are really significant. It's a shame that the media won't talk about any of them to any real extent, which is why you have a lot of people running around with no knowledge of these things. So thank you for watching. Have a good day.